you. I don't think I need a microphone. I think I'm loud enough. And because we're a small group, I think it would be nice if you actually join in the conversation. If you have any questions, don't wait till the end. Give me a shout. If there's any topics in specific that you would like maybe to look into, then we can come back to those afterwards. Otherwise, we'll disturb the flow. But questions, by all means, go ahead. So my name is Gili Beck. I've been in Thailand 17 years. And whatever business I've either worked for or owned, I've always tried to incorporate sustainability, not just about recycling or reducing, but actually looking at all aspects of whatever we do and how it impacts our surroundings and the people that we're working with or working on behalf of. So the reason I decided to cover this as a talking point today was we're living in Thailand. We're part of ASEAN, which has got a very, 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 very large increase in tourism numbers on a yearly basis. And at the same time, I've worked in the tourism industry, and we're hearing from agents overseas that Thailand is now a hard destination to sell because of the mess or because of the problems. But again, a lot of these problems have occurred over the years as tourism has grown and grown and grown. So a lot of people have benefited from the financial aspects of tourism, but without taking responsibility for the impact of tourism. So obviously, I'm sure you all know that there's a lot of focus on the World Tourism Authority, the UN, WHO, all of these bodies that are basically pushing. Even in Thailand now, DASTA have been GSTC certified in order to implement the rules and regulations that are needed to create a healthy model of tourism. So eco-tented camps as a sustainable model for destination. Who knows what an eco-tented camp is? Let's start with that. Yes, no? Do you know what, so how would you define an eco-tented camp?
It's like a semi-permanent kind of tented structure, and I think mostly they have shared facilities rather than individual, like this. There's a range.
Yeah, there's
like
range.
The ultra luxury, and then there's the simple camping.
But do you understand like what an ETC is? I call them ETCs because saying eco-tented camp every 5 minutes gets a bit difficult. So I've kept it short, all right? So ETCs are basically small, medium, or micro enterprises focused on the 3 pillars of sustainability, locations on the local communities, how they're actually built and implemented. So I'll use for example, there's a few tented camps in Khao. Okay? Now, yeah, they're beautiful, they're very cool, but if you look at how they actually operate, they're not sustainable. They have destroyed a lot of the natural habitat in order to build the tent. Be overwatered, and a lot of care needs to go into them. An eco-tented camp needs to be mainly non-permanent. So the idea is that they put in, let's say, walkways that are elevated above ground level, so that they're not walking on the ground. They would put in foundations to support a platform that can have a tent put on it, and a private bathroom, that's okay. But the idea is that if you dismantle everything, you haven't destroyed the entire location while you're building. So everything can just be taken away. Yes, they do tend to have like a community area or a main area where people can come and eat and talk and socialize. But the real focus is that they are not causing any long-term damage from the development stage through to actual operations, and then if they close or if they maybe are only there for 6 months of the year, because 6 months of the year it's a floodplain or monsoon season. But a lot of the eco accommodations that we see across the range tend to be permanent, or they have permanent foundations. the way that they are connected to the main electricity supplies, water supplies, waste supplies, sewage supplies, means that it's not actually a sustainable model and it's having a negative impact on the local environment. Another thing about ETCs is that they tend to be in very underpopulated areas, remote areas. I'll show you a lot of statistics afterwards. Whereas some of the glamping, the luxury tented camps that we see are a big trend now, they tend to be in areas that are already in demand because that's the customer base. So it's an alternative to what's existing, but it doesn't mean it's a sustainable model. Especially not in, if you think about some of the very large hotel groups that have, seen that there's a demand for glamping, and they've gone in and created these amazing, I mean, they're beautiful, don't get me wrong, but if you look at the impact, it's not a module that can sustain itself. Because once that area, sorry? Glamping. So glamping is glamorous camping, which was a trend that was started actually in Africa, where people, so glamorous camping actually started out because there were people on safari that wanted a hot bath, and they wanted a fan, and they wanted air conditioning. So they wanted all the facilities while they were on safari. So they literally started building a tent or a semi-permanent building that had all the facilities of a 5-star luxury hotel. So one of the points one of the reasons I really like the idea of an eco-tented camp is because it allows development in rural destinations or up-and-coming destinations without having to focus on heavy, heavy infrastructure. And you're looking at carrying capacity as well. One of the main things to remember about eco-tented camps, they need to be small. On average, I would say not more than, I think the statistic now is about 19 maximum tents. Some of them might be 25, some of them might only have 8. But the idea is to keep it very small so that you can limit the carrying capacity of how many people are on that location on a daily basis. Not just what they're doing there, but how do they get there? What happens when they leave? So this is the main focus of an eco-tented camp. The main differences between eco-lodges, green hotels, glamping resorts, etc., we call it eco-accommodation, is the fact that, so eco-lodges, they tend to be small to medium size, they tend to be in remote natural areas. They're focusing on conservation because without protecting what's around them, they are not going to survive. The problem with eco-lodges, it tends to be proper buildings. They tend to be permanent cabins, meaning that they've built foundations, meaning that they've had to bring in all the building supplies, meaning that they bring in proper specialists to actually build. You can't take a local worker to build a bungalow, but you could take a local worker and show him how to use the same system that he built his home with platforms and stairs, and then put up a tent. So eco-lodges also tend to be foreign investment. They're not always local investment. And they're a kind of mid-range investment if you think about how much money has to be put in order to start taking money out. The problem with eco-lodges, again, because they're not looking at a sustainable module, they are very often, they don't have their own water supplies. Not all of them, if they're built in a jungle, they can't use solar. So they might have black pipes on the roof for heating water in the day, but they need sunshine for solar. If they're in a very heavily wooded area, they can't put in windmills for alternative energy. And they cannot control what's happening in the vicinity. So if the village nearby starts cutting down all the trees, their business is kind of going to have a problem. If local poachers are coming in and taking all the wildlife, again, the eco-lodge is going to have a problem. Green hotels, which of course I think everybody knows, big, medium to big, permanent buildings. The normal module of a hotel, 4-star, 5-star, could be very beautiful, but they are working on initiating sustainability practices within the hotel. They look at, waste reduction, they look at recycling, they look at food waste reduction, and they work towards getting accreditation from globally recognized bodies like Travel Life, like Greenleaf, GSTC, so that they can promote themselves as a green hotel. But what we very often find in green hotels is just because they put a sign up saying, don't change my sheets every day, doesn't mean that they've trained the staff not to change the sheets. So saying that you're one thing and getting the accreditation, if we look at actually how the module works, it's better than a normal operating hotel, but it's not quite there yet. And again, these tend to be in highly touristic destinations, very popular. There's a reason why they put all this big money into these hotels, is because they know that they're going to get the high-end clientele that are willing to pay for it. Glamping resorts, so again, glamorous camping, to make sure that you understand the meaning of it. They tend to mix permanent structures and tented accommodation, but again, they will actually build big swimming pools and very, very nice facilities, but just because it's glamping and there's a tent involved doesn't mean it's sustainable, because these are popping up on high-end beaches around the world, in, as I said, safaris in Africa, but actually their impact is negative because they have to bring everything there. It's high electricity, high water, a lot of waste. So just because it looks like an eco-tented camp doesn't mean it is. And then the last of the 4 modules that we're talking about, that I'm comparing to, the ETC. So again, these can, investment-wise, it's a very small investment for a very fast return. You can have it as a basic eco-tented camp, or you can go all the way up to the top, like the Bill Bentley collections, which are basically 5-star hotels with a fabric structure surrounding them. Any questions about everybody understand now what we're talking about when we say an ETC? Okay. Yes.
This back the slide just back there. That hotel on the right, that looks like a completely fixed structure to me.
So this is that's actually
the glamping resort.
It's a glamping resort. So this is built on stilts. The majority of the whole property is actually built above ground. It's built on stilts, but all of the restaurant, the reception, the bathrooms, everything else is actually fully blown permanent structures. So on the stilts, you can see at the top, they've actually got the fabrics, the tents, right?
So that makes it.
So this is why it's a tent. It's a tent, but they've got actual doors and windows and air conditioning and running water and jacuzzis and
they've got to have some drainage, some wastewater.
Exactly. But again, because these tend to be in, will be in beautiful locations, but they're already locations that are popular and very often already reach carrying capacity. So it's much easier to build something like this on a small piece of land because there's no place to build big hotels. Or there's already limitations on how high they can go.
Sure.
Or there's already been enough problems with beach encroachment because the big hotels tend to get pride of place. So these kind of fit in somewhere between those that have got the money to spend and want luxury, but want to feel that they've got a little bit more of a unique experience. And glamping resorts don't tend to be too big. They'll be probably between 15 to 30 units versus eco-tented camps, which are normally not more than 20. Obviously green hotels, which will have hundreds of rooms, and eco-lodges, which there are eco-lodges now that actually have 50, 60 cabins. So again, they're removing the natural environment in order to expand. Great, a lot of the money that comes in does reach the local community because they'll hire locally, they'll train locally, they will look at getting the food from the local suppliers. So there is money going back into the local environment, and it can benefit the conservation efforts, but they're actually having a negative impact while they're trying to have a positive impact. ETCs actually started in Africa. They are a very, very, very popular model in the Americas, in Africa, for about 50 years actually. So they're not a new design, they're not a new development, but in the last 15 years, because of the demand and the constantly growing demand of tourists, that they want something that's more environmentally friendly, that's a bit more remote, that's unique. They want something with a personal touch. They want a different experience. And a lot of them will say, okay, well, if I'm going to spend $200 on a 5-star hotel, if I pay $250 and that extra $50 is doing something good, I would rather have that option. The problem, I think, is a lot of tourists want something more sustainable and they want to feel good about the choices that they're making, but they don't know or don't understand what options are available to them. Based on the information that's been collected, there's been a lot of research done on ETCs in other countries. I have focused on ETCs for ASEAN. So some of the market trends when we're looking at the ETC market is property owners typically limit the total number of tents per project to provide an exclusive environment, unique product, and design offering which is different to traditional hotels. So something else about ETCs, it tends to be local investors. So because it's a remote location, the land is very often owned by local families. So they don't need a big foreign group behind them to build because it's a low investment. It's not expensive to set up. And of course, you can set it up, and as the business makes money, you can grow and you can improve. You can add nicer facilities, but you're not having a negative impact in doing so. And with ETCs as well, because it's local investment, the money stays in the local areas, whereas with foreign investment, very often the money gets taken out of the country and it doesn't go back into sustaining the 3 pillars of people, planet, and profit. To preserve the unique experience, strict age limits are commonly imposed which impact segmentation. So one of the things we've noticed in ETCs is because they are in remote areas, there are no hospitals down the road. Some of them are very difficult to get to. Some of them you can only get to by boat. Some of them you need a special car that only comes once or twice a day. So they aren't necessarily friendly for children under the age of 10, for example. So it's a great product to promote to families or to cousins and aunts all come together. But one of the things to remember that it isn't necessarily suitable for very young children that might need medical attention, that could get hurt in the wilderness, on the beach, in the forest. Sometimes we've seen that there are families that say, okay, my child has traveled well, she's been trekking, and then it's okay. If she's 8 or something like that, then they'll make allowances. And then again, it goes the other way. Having people with mobility issues can limit them being considered suitable guests. Some of the eco-tented camps are very suitable for people with handicaps within the local vicinity. So they've made ramps and they've made handicapped access bathrooms, but they would not be able to participate in a lot of the activities that are part of what ETCs offer. So it's not just about the accommodation, it's about all the other activities that they offer. So whether it's trekking, whether it's actually going out to help with animal tracking, helping setting up photo traps. So it's not just about I'm staying in a camp in the middle of the forest or I'm staying in a eco-tented camp on the beach. It's about what are we going to do when we're there. And this is what people are paying for. This is where the money, why the investment versus the returns is pretty good. International luxury brands like Four Seasons and Aman are 2 groups that featured tented properties in Southeast Asia, which were there first. So these are 2 very, very big hotel groups that have multiple properties across ASEAN that went, oh, there's so much demand for it, and there's more people asking for it, but there's not enough actual ETCs to supply the demand. So they opened the one up in Chiang Rai, Anantara Golden Triangle. That's a tented luxury camp, but they are sustainable because of the way that they've done it from the ground up. And of course, they've got all the elephant mitigation there and other things that they're involved in. But it was the first of its kind. So if the big brands are noticing it, it's kind of, well, we don't want the big brands coming in and doing all the investment and building the ETCs. We want to keep them as local as possible because it's a module that's affordable and the benefits stay within the country and the region. The current forward outlook. So again, more mainstream developers embracing the product due to high investment returns from low capital cost, shortened development period and flexible format. Again, a big hotel, a green hotel, a glamping resort, an eco resort. They need architects to come in and actually build infrastructure. They need a certain system in place in order to operate. Because ETCs tend to be small, they also fall under different criteria within rules and regulations. They're much quicker to set up. It doesn't take years and years and years to build like some of these big developments. These can literally be built in a 6-month period. And flexible format, meaning you can look at the lay of the land and what's there and then design in between the trees rather than cutting them down. Rather than having to clear entire areas to make beautiful views, well, you don't need to clear anything. You need to keep as much natural plant life and resources in the area, and you fit into that rather than changing it all to suit your own design needs. Emerging destinations, Myanmar, Cambodia, Laos. They're now seeing the first ETCs that have been opening in the last couple of years. And again, it's a really, really, really easy business module for them to implement because they don't have to have a big road built. If they can get there by boat, or if they can get there by trekking, or they can get there from just a small pathway, rather than the other modules where they have to bring in huge amounts of infrastructure in order to set up the underground side of what's going to, facilitate the operations of the eco accommodation. So again, it's allowing locals to actually own a property. It allows them to develop using local wisdom and local knowledge, and then add all the fluff, as we call, like all the pretty things can come afterwards. It's allowing them not to have to connect to the main grid. So they don't have to wait 10 years to get electricity. They don't need big, loud generators that use a lot of fossil fuels, whether it's LPG or NGV or diesel. They can set up wind turbines. They can set up solar panels. And because it's from the beginning, it's very easy to set up storage areas. It's very easy to think about everything that they're going to need and how they can provide it for themselves so they become self-sufficient. With ETCs, you can grow your own food as long as you can control it so that you're not spreading it out into the environment. You don't really want wild rocket growing instead of orchids in the next 10 years. But you can actually grow a lot of the things that you need on a daily basis, herbs, vegetables. And then, of course, you go to the local communities to get everything else that you need in order to provide food for your customers, handcrafts, all the niceties in the tents. Chances are the local village is making baskets. It's making traditional handmade items that they use for themselves. So you're providing them with a business opportunity. And again, innovative product design and programming into niches like wellness, tree houses, active sports are expected to boost future growth. So with the ETC module, you look at where you build it, and you look at what activities you can offer in the vicinity. So it's not like staying in a hotel and then going on a 3-hour trip to go and see Ayutthaya and then come back to Bangkok, right? Here, everything is done on site or in the immediate vicinity. So ETCs in ASEAN are now waking up and going, oh, we can offer cooking classes in the local village, or we can bring the lady from the local village to actually do the cooking classes on site. What do we do with our food waste? Oh, we can make our own gas for cooking. There's now a wonderful little tent. You put all your food waste in there. It produces fertilizer and gas for cooking. So it's a small enough unit that you can operate it in a resort of 20 tents. So you're preventing anything from going back into your environment. You can also then educate the locals in the community about food waste, about circular industry, that everything that you produce that you can't use yourself, it can be given to them. So if you can't use all your food waste, use it for pig food. Give it to the local farmers. Give it back to them to use for their pigs. Things like fishing. Yes, you can order fish from the local suppliers. Or you could basically ask one of the villagers to look after the fish for you. So that instead of having to get fish from the sea or from a remote location, you actually show someone in the village how to breed fish. It provides food for themselves, but it also means you're affecting your supply chain, and you're having less of an impact and less, carbon damage by bringing everything onto the site. So the more that is done in the immediate vicinity, the more positive impact you actually have. At the moment, there are quite a few new properties that are going to be opening up across ASEAN. We have a couple already existing in Myanmar, Laos, Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Philippines. And in every single one of the countries, if there is more than one at the moment, there's at least 4 that are going to be opening in the next 18 months. So Thailand, there's going to be 14 opening in the next year and a half. Myanmar, there's 4. Laos, they've just opened 2, and there's 2 more coming. So if all of these countries that have never heard of ETCs before, and it hasn't been a big trend in the last 10 years, why is it over the last couple of years that they're just popping up everywhere? It's because the demand for them is increasing so much. Just so you know about prices, you were correct in talking about the different levels. But if you think that, let's say, a 5-star hotel in Bangkok, you can get a 5-star hotel in Bangkok now for 3,000 baht a night, for about $100. The average rack rate for ASEAN ETCs is around $340 a night. So that's for the tent. Could be 2 people, it might be 3. And on average, it's $270 a night in Thailand, which actually means that it's more expensive than a 5-star hotel. So yes, it includes activities, it includes food, but people are willing to pay these prices to go to a remote destination that's small, that's exclusive, it's a unique experience that they actually feel that they're contributing, and they see that their money actually keeps the forest standing or keeps the beach clean or takes care of the local community because they can see the impact that this money is having. Whereas if you go and put the $100 in a 5-star hotel, you don't know where that money goes. It goes into a business. You don't know what impact you're having. You have no direct connection to your local community or even the area that the hotel is built in. So it's just a place to stay, whereas here it's a lot more.
Quick question.
Yes?
There's a group, the monkeys of the rainforest or something or other, where they ride around on chains in the jungle.
Flight of the Gibbon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that? Sorry.
It's okay.
I don't
Monkey
have,
on chain, Flight of the Gibbon.
I
Yeah, I was like,
the
monkeys on
marketing
chain.
touch, obviously. Are those facilities considered eco?
Okay, so there's different modules of, everyone basically started copying Flight of the Gibbon. The original Flight of the Gibbon is actually very sustainable because everything's been built on platforms and wires. So you're not actually walking across the entire forest floor, or you're not breaking the canopies. It's like a pathway. It's the same as a diver when we used to cut pathways in the reef. So we would destroy that one little section of reef, and that would be the only place you were allowed in and out to stop them walking on the other parts of the reef. So in that way, it is sustainable, but it's not a business that focuses on inclusiveness and bringing everybody into the community. It still works as a business module, as in, we've invested, we're making money. But they do train and hire local guides. They do actually teach, conservation and, love of wildlife and biodiversity. But it's not a business model that was built on sustainability. It benefited from conservation. So it's more like the eco-lodge than the ETC. Because if the environment isn't taken care of, no one's going to fly through the canopies, right? Okay, so any other questions? No? Okay, so market overview. This is the tiers. This is kind of the types of ETCs that we see at the moment. You have luxury, upscale, mid-scale, budget, and economy. The 53% of the share at the moment is upscale. So it's not the very, very, very high end. It's kind of the medium to high range where they have their own bathroom, you know, with hot water, and they have electricity on at least 12 hours a day. Some of it will run on solar panels. Sometimes during winter months, when there's not enough sun in the day, they'll use the batteries that have stored the energy, but then they'll only put them on at night. They won't have it running in the day. But it tends to have all the nice amenities that you would have in a normal hotel. Whereas the luxury is like 5-star, just anything you can imagine, jacuzzi, literally a jacuzzi bathtub inside the tent, with a mini bar and room service and everything you could need. The mid-scale ones tend to be less focused on technology, so they won't have Wi-Fi. You know, they're very often remote, so your 3G doesn't work either. You know, there might be a phone box or a telephone that is connected to a little satellite so that they can actually have calls coming in and out, and you can make calls as well, but it's not like the luxury ones, that's for certain. And there won't be any like TVs in the rooms. There won't be hi-fi and music playing in the community area because they want to keep the noise pollution down as well. And then the budget and economy ones will literally be kind of like going tent camping by yourself. You know, you take your tent, you take your sleeping bag, and it's going to be a mattress on a platform with a tent surrounding it. That you tend to wake up quite wet in the morning because of the condensation. So it's the quality of the tent and the facilities. But it's interesting that it's actually the upscale that has taken over the trend. So people are realizing I can charge another $50 a night just by making it look nicer. Sometimes they have the same facilities. It's just, oh look, it's got 3 night lights instead of just 1. I can charge more money. Another nice thing about tents, of course, and especially with all the development, is that they can actually be made from natural fibered fabric. So they're making them again from hemp. Wonderful product. They're making them from bamboo fabric, which is, retains its antiseptic properties. So even the materials being used to build the ETCs can be 100% environmentally friendly and from a sustainable source. With regards to locations that you'll find ETCs now, not countries, but actually locations, the most popular one is the forest because it tends to be remote. It's more difficult for people to actually go and explore by themselves. So having like a base camp in the middle of the forest where you can go out and go trekking or you can go kayaking and really listen and interact with nature, be it plant life or animal life, they are definitely the most popular. And also because, for example, in Cambodia, the government has given concessions on forest land. So to stop people from coming in and cutting down the trees and logging illegally and to stop all the illegal wildlife trade that's going on, they've given actual properties. As long as that property can make money, they give it as a concession. So people can have that property for 10 years or 20 years. And the money that's being made from the property, you have to show that you're doing what you would call CSR projects, so corporate social responsibility projects. So local engagement, for example, rangers in Cardamom Mountains in Cambodia. They work with the park rangers. So the rangers have now become the guides. They're the ones actually interacting with the visitors. They've brought in a teacher to teach the guides English. So they're improving the livelihoods and the capabilities of the rangers who would never have another opportunity. Because if something happens to them and they can't work, there isn't even another job for them to transfer to. They would have to actually leave the village or leave the area in order to go find work somewhere else. Then, of course, beach is the second most popular. Cultural. So cultural meaning it could be in the middle of a rice field in Loy. So really about looking at local untangible heritage and setting up an ETC somewhere in a very remote province so that they can immerse themselves in the local culture. Then, of course, rivers. So like the property from the Bilbenti collection, they've actually built the property on the edges of a river in the forest, where the reason they've had to go so much higher is once they started building, they realized, oh, it's a flood zone. This is when there's big, heavy rains, this is where all the water comes. So they've had to kind of make them much higher than they originally wanted. And of course, golf. So there's certain areas in Asia where golf is obviously a big thing, but sometimes you have to drive 3 hours to the golf course you want to play on. So ETCs are now becoming a stay on the golf course kind of option. Okay, so does anybody here not know what the UN SDGs are? Everybody knows, right? Okay. So I'm going to ask you guys this. What do you think about each one of the 17 goals? How do ETCs tie in to all of the UN SDGs? Let's start with number one, ideas. So for example, no poverty. An ETC built in a forest, the closest village, right, they tend to be quite poor. So here's a way to actually bring money into the local communities. It's also a trade-off. This is where I like ETCs, because it's a very easy way to show people that they can make money by protecting the source that brings the money, brings in the income. As I call it, environmental economics. So instead of you going and taking the wild birds or killing the wild pig or collecting the eggs, if you know where to find those things, and today you get $5 for it, stop taking it. I will bring the customers to you. You will take them to see where the eggs are, where the wild boars are, where the deer are, where the plant life is, and they will each give you $5. And they can come every day because you haven't taken it away. So this is where the point on no poverty really comes into play. Zero hunger, again, by showing them how to manage their food source, how to grow multiple crops, because an ETC doesn't just need rice once a year or doesn't just need tomatoes once every couple of months. They need seasonal produce and they need regular produce to supply to their staff and to their customers. So showing growing techniques or bringing in specific items that need to be grown for your own use, you're teaching the locals how to do it for themselves as well. So even if they're not making money from the food, you're teaching them the nutritional value of food. A good example of this one is there's a buffalo dairy farm that's been opened up in Laos near Luang Prabang. Now these two women, American and Australian, had never even milked a buffalo. But one of the reasons they actually decided to do this was they'd been in Sri Lanka and they had had curd and treacle. Curd is like sour buffalo milk. It's kind of like a hard yogurt. And treacle is made from the palmyra. It's like syrup, like honey. And they saw the buffalo in Laos and they wanted to have curds and treacle. You've got the palmyra palm and you've got the buffalo. Where's my curds and treacle? And they were, of course, told nobody here milks the buffalo. Laos has got a very, very, very high level of malnutrition in children under the age of 12. It's really, really bad. We're talking about, I think it's 37% of all children under the age of 12 literally are starving, even though they eat rice and pork every day. But that's not nutrition. So they started looking at it, that buffalo milk actually offers a very, very, very high level of nutrition. And it's got no lactose in it like cow's milk. So a lot of Asians don't like milk because they're lactose intolerant. They're not used to it. But buffalo milk is suitable for anybody. It's very, very difficult to actually be allergic to buffalo milk. It's good for eczema. It's good for many, many things. But all the buffaloes on the that the Laos farmers have, they don't milk them. They don't really take care of them. They leave them they bring them in to plow the fields or, you know, to sell them for meat. So they went, okay, how can we look at all these problems when the solution is right here? The buffalo is the solution to all these problems. So they started renting the buffaloes from the local farmers. They don't own them, they only rent them. They get them healthy, you make sure that they're in good condition, they get them pregnant, then they start the milking process. They don't separate the mothers and the calves. They feed the calf a little bit less in the day so that they can milk, and at night the calf feeds normally. Then when they go back to the farmer, the mother and the calf are together. So this business they're getting the milk to make cheese and ice cream and all the things that they need for their farm. They're educating the farmers about animal welfare and treatment. They're providing nutrition to the local kids. And then when they have the little ETC, the customers come to stay, the customers are also learning about not all dairy is bad if it's done properly. Not all buffalo meat tastes bad, not all, you know, if they're fed properly. Not all buffalo are bad to eat because they're full of parasites and they're sick. So it all works for the business module, for the community, for the customers. The staff are learning this, and a lot of the staff that leave now are going back to remote villages in Laos and practicing what they've learned on this buffalo dairy farm. So again, having the accommodation on the farm means that the people staying are involved in all of this. They get to see how the cows are milked, they get to wash the buffalo themselves, they get to listen to how the farmers are trained. So it has a 100% positive impact on the local area. Good health and well-being, again, have you ever been to a resort where people are really sick and you know, everyone is coughing and sneezing? No, right? Because they would be sent home immediately. So good health and well-being, it's about the staff that work for you and about their families. And if you're hiring from the local community, again, it goes back into them. Quality education. Now, obviously, not every small ETC can afford to bring in teachers to start teaching everybody, but the training that they'll be getting when they're learning on the job is more than they would be able to afford if they had to go and study in a city far away from home. So they're learning about good practices, responsible behavior, critical thinking, customer service. They're getting, it's more than just turning up to a hotel and, you know, being a chef. Because it's small and it's hands-on, people get a real chance to develop their abilities and talents. Gender equality. So far we've seen in most ETCs, because they're hiring locally, there is no preference between men and women. And there is no difference in how much they get paid either. You know, everyone gets paid for the job that they do. Whereas we find, especially in tourism, that there's a big gap in gender equality. Different countries, it changes. So for example, in Thailand, we find that 65% of the hospitality staff are actually women, not men. There's a much higher female workforce in the hospitality industry in Thailand versus, let's say, Sri Lanka, where there's not even 10% of women in the hospitality industry because of the stigma, because they think if you're a woman and you go and work in the hospitality industry, you're basically asking for trouble. It's dangerous. You need to stay at home or work close to home. So again, ETCs in that regard can really help balance gender equality. Obviously, clean water and sanitation. So not only about clean water for the guests and the people on the resort, but actually how it affects the communities and sanitation. So an ETC that has been set up properly doesn't have drainage going into the river or into the forest. It would have the underground systems, the overflow systems, which you can use with plants to actually clean the water. And so by the time it gets to the shallow basin, does everybody here know about this system? You've seen it, right? So what they actually do is you go underground and you build like pools underground. And you have a deep pool and then a shallower pool and then a shallower pool. So it's like steps. So the majority of the dirty water, of the wastewater, goes into the deep pool first. It has special bacteria and enzymes that are put in, and they actually feed off the dirt. If there's no dirt, that bacteria will die because they have no food. So there's no chance of it escaping into the natural environment and causing any problems. All right? So then as the levels fill up, it goes into the next shallower level. But all the dirt has basically been processed in the deep one before it goes into the next one. Then they bring in plants, so things like water hyacinth, which is an invasive species, but is actually a pretty amazing plant. So this way that they're ensuring that if there is any water that's released for irrigation, for farming, for being reused in, let's say, the toilet systems, so the whole system can be recycled, but also if anything is released, it's not going to cause any damage because it's already clean by the time it reaches the surface. And again, setting up a system like this, if you show the locals, if you've got them coming in to do the work, they now have learned something that they can go back and implement in the village. Affordable and clean energy, we all know about solar, we all know about wind, wave, yes?
Just going back to the clean water.
And sanitation, yep.
I found that one of the main problems isn't actually natural sewage, it's the cleaning liquids and chemicals that we release in there.
Yep.
Would that actually help?
So, first of all, an ETC should not be allowing any chemicals to come into the natural environment. What you can do is you can make a lot of these things yourself using everything from kombucha vinegar, bicarbonate of soda. If you want, I have recipes about all of these things to make natural soap, natural conditioner, fabric, dishwashing liquid, everything that have got zero chemicals. And again, that's something that you can get the local villagers to make. So you're creating an industry that supplies themselves and that they can sell to others. Now, if there's, let's say, 20 tents and somebody uses a bit of soap or conditioner once, you're not going to disrupt the whole system. But if everybody starts using it, then you're going to have a problem with all the SLSs and SLRs and all the chemicals that actually create algae blooms and kind of the stuff that we don't want in our water because it's suffocating and it allows the bad things to grow instead. But that's one of the things that an ETC should have in its policies. So, you know, that if you're providing everything for your customers and you tell them don't bring anything with you, you could even have a bag check that everything that they bring has to stay with reception. You know, if they bring a plastic bottle or you know, a plastic bag or whatever, that when they leave, they have to take it with them. So they could do the same thing when people travel with shampoo and gel and all the rest of it. At the end of the day, you still don't want all your customers smelling bad. They still need these things, but there are actual alternatives. And it's a great way to make extra money. You set up a little gift shop. You know, in the village, people can go there and buy all these things to take back with them as well. And a lot of the herbs and plants that you can use to make your homemade products are found in the vicinity anyway. So, but that's, again, activities about doing workshops and things while people are staying on the camp. Where am I? 8. So decent work and economic growth. We all know that one of the biggest problems in ASEAN is migrant workers and the migrant workforce. That people need money to support their families. They don't have work in the local villages. They go to cities, which is why, you know, the metropolitan dilemma and the growth of cities is increasing so much on a year-on basis, is because more and more people are leaving their communities in order to find job alternatives. If they are able to provide for their families locally, then you're not breaking up the family unit. You're not disconnecting people from their ancestral wisdom and history. And I'm sure you guys all know about, there's villages around Southeast Asia where there's literally no one there anymore. A village from 300 people, there's suddenly nobody. Because as the family units have been broken by people moving away to try and find work, there's nothing to support the older people that have stayed behind, and eventually the village collapses. And this actually allows economic growth, so local investment. If the owners of an ETC are from the local community, obviously that's economic growth for their local community as well as for themselves. And decent work. Decent working conditions obviously are a very big part of sustainability. The people side about it's not just how you treat the people that come to you. It's about how that you treat the people that work for you as well. Industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Obviously here we're talking about less infrastructure, but infrastructure that's been set up correctly. Innovation. We've seen some pretty amazing problem-solving skills in eco-tented camps, where, for example, they've started building and they've realized that the land isn't level or that there's going to be floods in monsoon season, and how they can, fix the problem and solve it without having to, bring in experts. And there's a lot of very clever people figuring out how to solve problems. And of course, this is when, again, local community come into play, why they're so important. Because they've been doing a lot of this stuff themselves. It's local wisdom, local architecture, that they know which way the wind blows. They know which way is not a good idea to put windows because it's going to make it too hot. It's using the information that's there and incorporating it into your business practices and your module. Reduced inequalities, again, hiring girls to be local guides and not just boys, for example. We tend to find that most of the tour guides or the nature-based guides and rangers are men. Here's a chance to actually encourage women to join. If you get kids involved and actually give them a chance to have some fun with all these activities, you're encouraging them to go along a route that, to replace the older generation. So they already know that this is good, this is not good, without being disrespectful, of course. And instead of only having foreign investment and foreigners coming in to run a business or develop it, you can set up a train-the-trainer. So yeah, maybe foreigners come in because they've got the experience, or not a Farang foreigner like me, but a foreigner from the north of Thailand coming to the south of Thailand, that's also not a local, that have got the experience and skills, and then you train the trainer. So they then start teaching people in the local community to basically be able to run and operate the business, and they can go set up a new one somewhere else. Sustainable cities and communities. Obviously, again, we're trying to move away from the carrying capacity of cities. So this is more focusing on sustainable communities. Responsible consumption and production, of course, an ETC can be 100% self-sustaining, self-sufficient, and ensure that even if there is any waste that's produced, that they have a proper solution for it, that it's not just given to somebody else to solve the problem. They are accountable for everything that comes in and everything that goes out. Climate action, well, obviously, they're going to be very proactive in planting trees and helping with wildlife rescue and release. We all know, you're all at Sassin, so you all know what climate action is, so that should be okay. Life below water. An interesting ETC that we've seen on the banks of the Mekong is the fact that, again, they're growing their own fish and nets. Right in front of the camp, they actually have their own fish. So they're not taking fish out the river. They've got fish in there breeding. So when the customers order fish, they literally go and take it out the net, straight to the kitchen. There's no food waste. And the bones and the things that are left behind are then used to feed the other animals in the vicinity. They obviously are encouraging clean water systems, kayaking, boarding, all kinds of water activities that are non-invasive. So even things like otter watching, which was something that we were doing in Cambodia. It was amazing, watching actually teaching people how to sit and watch and respect wildlife, so that you actually become, as an observer, you're not there to make a noise, but then you watch what they're using, what they're building, what they bring, what is under the water that is of such interest to the otters. Because not everybody goes swimming and is happy to put their head underwater to see what's going on. But whether it's the sea, whether it's rivers, lakes, actually having activities that are not invasive, that help people have a better understanding about the biodiversity and the ecosystem and why it has to be protected and preserved. Life on land, of course, this is everything nature-based, animals, plants, so on and so forth. Peace and justice, strong institutions. Well, again, I mean, it's always nice if you can mitigate in the local community, whether it's helping them deal with social injustices, land encroachment, their own rights, whether it's religious conflict, and of course, again, teaching your staff and treating your staff in a fair manner and showing them that everybody deserves the same respect. You're having an impact on them. So when they go home, and this now becomes part of the way that they operate, and their children learn from it, you're changing the way people perceive things. And it's like, if you remove fear and replace it with understanding, you're not going to have hate. You know, you're going to be able to deal with peaceful situations very quickly. And of course, partnerships for the goals. So partnerships is who do you work with? Whether it's your business partner, whether it's your local partner, whether it's government, whether it's private sector, stakeholders, and ensuring that you have an effect on your supply chain. So your partnerships, whether they're internal or external, if you have these standards for yourself and you start demanding those standards from your partners and from your supply chain, at the end of the day, for example, if I go to the market and I buy 5 kilos of tomatoes every time I go, and the supplier always gives it to me in a plastic bag, and I go, I don't want a plastic bag. Here, I've made fabric bags from the sheets that were ripped at my ETC. Here's my produce bag. Every time I come, I'll give you a clean one, you give me one full of tomatoes. You've already changed the way that supplier is providing you with what you need by eliminating plastic from the supply chain. He is then, if he doesn't do it, you'll go, okay, I'll go to the one next door who'll do it. So you can actually have positive pressure and a positive impact on your partners and supply chain in order for them to fit your requirements and your standards. Now, none of this happens overnight, of course. This is all, it's one step at a time, and it's like an escalator. You get on and you keep moving forward. But this is why out of all of the eco-accommodation models that we've seen to date, the ETCs are the only ones that can actually meet the SDGs, and all of them. Any questions or comments at this point? Sure? Okay. All right, so this is the summary. ETCs are an important and financially viable module for social and natural development ASEAN sectors of hospitality, ecotourism, conservation, and responsible environmental practices, with a rapidly growing demand from a consumer-based perspective. So here you've got demand. There are people who want it. It's a module that is 100% sustainable if implemented correctly. And I keep saying if implemented correctly, because you have to think about every single part of the process while you're developing and building it to make sure that you don't forget something like cleaning products. And ETCs, compared to other existing eco-accommodation modules, are more viable and sustainable when implemented correctly. Okay. Questions? What do you guys think about ETCs now with a little bit more information? Go, go, go! So, based on so based on what we've seen with the ETCs that have been opened in the ASEAN countries to date, you don't need as much planning permission because you're not building permanent structures. Some countries like Thailand, if you're doing it in an area that's considered one of the DUSTA areas, so the destinations for sustainable development, if it's in one of those provinces, you're already getting big tax breaks, and they are very, very supportive. Governments should actually be encouraging this. Rather than them focusing, like in Myanmar, for example, the government there is huge on hotel development. They just want everyone to come and build hotels. Why do you want all these hotels if you've got no customers? So you get people that were working in Thailand to go back to work in Myanmar, and they have no jobs because there's no people in all these huge, big hotels. And they should actually be encouraging ETCs because there are so many rural, beautiful, beautiful locations across Burma that you can't stay in because they don't allow homestay. So this would actually offer an alternative to homestay as well, because then a rural community could say, right, we're giving this land, it's going to be community land, and we're going to build our ETC here, so it's not considered homestay. Thailand, ETCs could actually be more beneficial in the national parks than allowing encroachment and allowing big corporations to come and buy land to build hotels that are nothing but damaging. So because of ASEAN's regulations on sustainable tourism development, ETCs actually fit in with those regulations better than anything else. So again, it's just getting this module to the government sectors to make them aware of it, because a lot of them have never even heard of it. They just think it's a camp. They're like, well, if I want to go camping, I just take my camp and my sleeping bag, and it's like, yeah, no, that's not what this is. So because of the push towards sustainable tourism development, and because PATA, like all of the big report writing companies, if you like, that are providing the data, that are doing the research, and they all come up with the same information, that the demand for sustainable tourism and responsible practices within the hospitality sector is growing by more than 15% year on year. So actually, I think I've got my statistic for 2018 here. Hang on, it's in my notes. So for sustainable development, yeah. So this fits in, and because they don't always know that it's an ETC. As I said, they haven't quite figured out this whole module yet. Where am I? So at the moment, this is 2018 report, obviously, because we don't have 2019 yet, and even this was. Huh? Oh, I just updated it 2 weeks ago. So I was waiting for it. So, according to the World Travel and Tourism Council, tourism contributes more than 12% of ASEAN's total GDP, and which is 4% above most regions in the world. And the current demand for sustainable products has increased by 27% from 2011. So from 2011 to 2018, and this is what they have in the report. This is not, that's the information that they're getting when people are already here. But if they actually, because it's, PATA and they're doing all these, if they collected this information from tour operators before the customers came, the number is much higher. But I'm reporting on ASEAN. I wasn't meant to do all the globe. Yeah, so this is a module that I think, if it's offered in places like Sasin, in hotel training centers, actually educating agents and tour operators about these, I think the demand would be much easier to be filled, because it's like, we want it, but we don't know that it exists. So really getting the information out there and sharing it. I think at this point, whether it's governments or agencies like DUSTA, if they actually went, okay, we want to encourage this module, you don't have to pay tax for the 2 years. Or, if you hire 10 people from the local vicinity, they get their, medical insurance, local government insurance covered for the first 2 years. So just like they give incentives to local investment and foreign investment for big complexes and amusement parks and hotels, they should be actually going, no, you guys need to pay us. You need to pay us for what you're doing. Give us more money. You don't get any tax breaks, and the tax breaks goes to the local entrepreneurs who are actually doing something that's beneficial both for their own local community, their own sense of a business venture, and of course the environment. Any other questions? Really? Guys, you are so quiet. Please.
Yeah, it was very impressive.
I can hear you, but I
yeah.
think it's for them.
But I'm not 100% convinced because we won't be able to achieve sustainable society unless we change the cities, right?
Very true. But
and
again, the whole point of the ETC is that it can be set up away from
Yeah.
high density
Yeah.
populations and areas that have over exceeded their carrying capacity. So the focus on that one, the ETC as a sustainable model for developing new destinations across ASEAN, if we look at the other 3 modules that exist at the moment, the green hotels, the eco lodges, and the glamping, none of them can actually fulfill all of the UN
I
SDGs.
agree with that. My question
Yes.
is, you talked about educating the local people, but actually my image of sort of sustainable tourism is rather city people learning from the local people.
Yes. Well, it's a two-way interaction,
Yeah.
for sure. Education, when I mean educating the local people, it means actually giving them skills and knowledge that very often is based on their local practices and wisdom, but changing it to actually be more sustainable. So as I said, not telling the hunter, don't go into the forest to look for birds. You can still go into the forest for birds, but don't kill them. Take the photographers or the bird watchers with you. So you're not changing the way your way of life, but you're improving it and ensuring that it will be here in 10, 15, 20 years. And the activities that ETCs offer really are about, engaging with the local community. And it's not like going to, unfortunately, let's say one of the long neck hill tribe villages, which is like a human zoo. Because there, you're going in mass tourism to take photos, maybe buy a souvenir. But you don't really get a chance to sit and learn and discover. So here, bringing in local guides. I'm interested in herbs, for example, like for medicinal purposes. So the old lady in the village probably knows better than anyone what to use if you have a cough, what to use if a child has a fever. She knows that this is a good root, this is a good seed. And ETC can actually create seed banks, for example. So they can go in, because we know a lot of the stuff that falls on the forest floor doesn't get to grow because it's dense and not everything, there's too much competition. Once a year, during different seasons, you can go and collect seed banks. And actually, so that you can then use that to plant in other areas where there's been damage and get your customers to go with the locals, because again, the locals will know what time of year to plant, what grows next to each other, what doesn't grow next to each other. So really, it's about mutual engagement. So educating your customers, but also educating the people that work for you and the local communities. Any other ones? Because that was a good question. Anybody else? I think everybody just wants to go and drink beer.
Sorry?
I think everybody wants to go and drink beer.
Oh. That was just me.
From what you know now about ETCs, would you actually go and stay in one? Would you say, okay, I want to go and experience an eco-tented camp? Would you be interested? Would you?
There's a security concern too, it seems to me, in a lot of places. They're isolated, number one, and number two, they're not exactly the most strong structures.
No, the
to
structures will be strong because you're building, they have a foundation
Yeah.
that goes in. But remember, when you leave, those foundations can be pulled
They've gotta
out.
be, and I looked at those pictures. It looks to me like you could put your hand through the wall in some of those places.
Well, but that's why tents don't have walls. It's a tent. And now with all the modern technology, they actually make tents with like moving panels inside. So you can have a 2-bedroom tent today, then you take out the panel and then it's just a normal one. You can make private corners.
It's still just cloth.
On bamboo structures. Yeah, but
Punch right through it. So no, it's just, and again, the isolation contributing to the lack of security or
well,
the risk threat, I would say.
So again, that's a catch-22, right? Because it's secluded, chances are no one's going to come and rob your tent because they can't get there. But then again, but that's why there's normally somebody who's properly medically trained on site, which again is a responsibility of the management to make sure that all their staff have first aid training and at least one person on site at all times that can deal with a snake bite, with a twisted ankle, whatever it is. Again, any good business that offers tourist facilities and hospitality should have an evacuation plan. Should have emergency contacts if they need a helicopter or if they need a boat. But that's all part of a good, healthy, business plan.
Yeah.
The reason for them not really wanting very young children in, especially at this stage, it's also there's certain people maybe when they travel they want to be in nature, they don't want to hear other people's children screaming. And I think parents, when they travel with kids, they want their kids entertained so that they can relax and have a good time. So maybe in the future, the ETCs there could be specifically family-friendly ETCs designed for that purpose. So great, this is the kids' club. Get all the kids going and drawing animals and making masks and having fun, while the parents get to go trekking with the guides or go kayaking and have a cocktail.
Put the kids in the cages over there.
Put the kids in the cages. But this would be healthy business competition. It would be very healthy business competition because you're not going to get 3 eco tents right next door to each other, because the idea is that they're in remote, secluded destinations that don't have, all the facilities already there. So this is a way of preserving your business module, because you're thinking long term. You can still have that same module in 20 years. Yeah, maybe every 2 or 3 years you might have to upgrade your fabric or replace, some of the facilities, but they do that in all the big hotels anyway. So it's actually, I think, a good business module and a healthy, because maybe somebody builds an ETC 10 kilometers down the road, and they've come up with a new technology or a new wastewater system or a new way of facilitating the release of animals back into the wild. So you can learn from each other and you can collaborate. But when you're small and if you don't have 200 rooms and 300 members of staff, it's enough that you have 10 customers every day. Your business is going to make money. So I think it's unlike, I know what you mean by like the hotels. Every week now in Bangkok, a new 5-star hotel is opening, and the old ones are closing, and this one's renovating, and they're not upcycling the materials. They're not recycling the materials. It's all just waste. But they're doing it because I need a rooftop bar, because they opened a rooftop bar. And this one did this, so I have to do it. So they're following trends that are not sustainable, because people are actually moving away. People want this, not that. So, and because it's a small investment, rather than a huge, big investment, less chance of, loss. But you can actually just pick everything up and move it. So it didn't work here. I'm going to go and set it up in a new location. And most of the stuff can just be moved, whereas a big hotel can't do that. Does that answer your question? Any more? Yes.
You were talking about people moving toward this kind of tourism, but from what I've seen about tourism, especially in, you have like a Western attitude towards sustainability, sustainable tourism, and then you have a more Asian attitude, which is not as centered around.
Yes and no. So there is more of a trend in ASEAN towards looking for alternative options because of social media and because of selfies, and they actually, not always for the right reasons, but they want it because it's unique and it's special, and they think it's cool, and well, nobody else is doing it, so I want to be the first, all right? Whereas we've seen a huge increase in the demand for sustainable tourism from countries like Taiwan. And the Taiwan are big tourists, and they're actually looking for better options now because they're practicing it at home. When they travel, they want to be able to practice it as well. Surprisingly, the Chinese, but not the big groups, the kind of higher level Chinese that now they're like, well, we're big spenders, so we want to get quality for the money that we spend, not just quantity. And again, they want to be different. They don't want to go where all the other Chinese are going. So there's the reason that the one in Myanmar was built so quickly was because of demand from the Chinese market. So again, the same that maybe 20 years ago when Thais traveled abroad, they didn't want to go and stay in a 5-star hotel. They wanted to stay in a B&B or in a small guest house. Now when they travel, they want to stay in the 5-star hotel. So these are trends that are changing. But I think if ETCs are not thought of as a niche market and they become more available, they will actually become, they're more viable to become mainstream and stay there versus whatever's trending at the moment. Because it's a module that, I mean, you can upgrade your tent, you can change the color scheme, you can use local produce to make global inspired food, but you do it on site. And the food that's cooked is for you and your partner or the guests at the table, and not a buffet and a Sunday brunch in a hotel that half of it's been sitting there for 2 hours and the other half goes to waste. So, this is why I always finish any talk I do with educate yourself and others about responsible travel and sustainable practices to ensure your choices benefit people, planet, and the prosperity of all. So again, it's all about when people know that there's an option and they understand why this is a good option, this is not a good option, people like to feel good about themselves at the end of the day. So if you know that your money is helping to keep the forest standing or teaching the kids of fishermen how to swim, then you're getting the same luxury and the same unique holiday experience, but with a personal connection, versus spending the same money in a hotel that you don't even see the same person in reception every day. So I think this is in ASEAN, it's a niche market. I have Thai friends who, when they've been to Africa on safari, I said, how was your trip? They were like, we stayed in the most magical tent in the middle of the veldt I've ever seen in my life. I'm like, they were like, everything, they were so amazed. I'm like, you have them in Thailand. They're like, no. I'm like, yes. Khao Yai, Elephant Hills, Chiang Rai, Khao Sok, Khao Lak. There's more and more of them now in Thailand. But at the moment, most of the Thais haven't quite, because they don't even know what an ETC is, they don't know what to ask for. So, but it's coming. Mark my words. And the market research, I mean, we're talking C9, like there's big corporations that do this research, which is where I've been getting a lot of my information from. Because if I look online, try and search for an ETC or an eco-tented camp. It's all Africa and America. There's hardly anything. You have to specify countries. But they're collecting the information, and if the big hotel groups are investing in these already, they know where to make money. They know what's coming next. So I don't think it'll be long before even, locals will be going, we're going to go stay on an ETC. Any other questions? No? In that case. So I've made this available, and there's actually, for every slide, there's notes and like the research information and all the details. If anybody's interested, I think it can be provided and shared.
Yeah, we've got a link for you. Okay, good. And what I'd like to do is present this nice little certificate.
You need a photo?
Yeah, a photo, but then get everybody in the photo too.
Everybody come.
All right, so take one this way.
Oh, this way.
Okay.
Should I shake your hand?
You want to?
Why not?
Okay, there you go.
Come down. Thank you. Come down. A little group cuddle. Oh, I have to hold this. Oh, yeah, because I shook your hand. Wait, maybe, okay. Where are you going? Oh, you want to turn that? No, he's turning the screen off. It's okay. Come back. Don't be shy, I don't bite. I thank you all very much. I hope you found it interesting and maybe learned something today as well.
I come from South, 2 hours from here.
Lotit Mark, yeah, I know.